back to the Sun Sports Show. Nick Clark, John Sherman, Mike Shaughnessy, and your host, Greg Kleven. We're going to discuss the boys basketball season, which is actually underway now. Who are some of the teams that you think might be the ones to beat in your area?
Well, obviously, I guess Hopkins is in a small way in my area, and we'll let John talk about Hopkins in a minute. Probably the top team that I cover this year is Robbinsdale Cooper High School. So if they can develop a bench, they're going to be in the mix late. So that's the best team I cover. Osceo's up there as well. They're a top 10 team. They have Sam Dower is going to Gonzaga recruit. They're going to be okay. They have some question marks in terms of filling some holes with some guys that played some big minutes last year and made some big baskets as the year progressed, including Tankson, who was probably one of the top 10 players in the state last year. So Armstrong will be okay again. They have some talented kids. They're just 2 years removed from playing for a state championship. I guess their top player, Demarius Cruz, just signed a letter of intent to the University of Minnesota Crookston. But in the Classic Lake Conference this year, it's going to take a heck of a lot more than that. Minnetonka, the defending 5A champion, or 4A champion, excuse me, they have some holes to fill, but I saw that they're ranked 5th, and kind of segue to John here at Hopkins. And Hopkins might put on the best high school basketball team we've seen in some time in this state this year.
Well, many of these bloggers, Nick, have been saying the top 3 teams in the state are the Gophers, the Timberwolves, and Hopkins, not necessarily in that order, and that might be a little bit lofty to consider Hopkins with those teams. However, the Royals do have 4 Division I signees in the starting lineup, and another player who's good enough to play Division I in point guard Marcus Williams, plus several younger players who will eventually be D1 players. So I don't see how you give the nod to anybody but Hopkins this year. They're just too deep, too talented, too well coached by Kenny Novak Jr., Kenny Novak Sr., and the rest of the staff. It's going to be a great year for Hopkins. There are, of course, good teams up at Cooper, and Osseo and Henry Sibley is ranked 2nd right now. Very good team. It's going to be a fun season. It's going to be interesting to see if anybody even comes close to Hopkins, and I'm not sure they will.
Well, I just wanted to say something about John Sherman. He's a guru of high school basketball in this state. He not only has covered prep sports for 35, 36 years with us, but he's the director of the Minnesota Magic AAU program, so he's coached many of the players that have went on to garner Division I, Division II scholarships all around the country. He was responsible for Cole Aldridge. He also coaches the Minnesota Transitions basketball team, and many of you saw him on television, statewide television last winter when he led his team, coached his team to a 2nd place finish. And if there's ever an expert or any question you need to know about Minnesota basketball, just go mnsun.com and make a couple of comments there, and John will help you out. Mike, what does the basketball outlook look in your area there?
I don't have any top 10 teams in my area, so I don't have anything for you. First, from Sibley's standpoint, we'll have to see how quickly they can shake off last year's state championship game when they blew a lead and lost to Minnetonka. Possibly they've shaken that off already. We'll see. Sibley is probably the tallest team in the state. Apple Valley, their top player will be Varmasoni, the receiver, defensive back, kick returner, who was their top player in football. Sony is almost like a kamikaze going to the basket, so he's going to have to wind his way through some pretty tall kids. Sibley has a couple of guys who know what to do with the ball once they get it. Finding a guy who can get it up the court for them might be their biggest challenge.
Yeah, I was going to say the guard play might be the one thing where Sibley, they had a senior playing point guard last year. Leslie, I think was his last name, Peter Leslie, and he was the engine kind of that got those guys inside the ball, and down low, I think they got 4 guys that are 6'7" or taller. If they can find a way to run some sort of offense and get that ball down low. They're going to be a team that's going to give a lot of some people some problems.
I covered Henry Sibley in the state tournament last year, and they had a talented team. They're going to be almost similar this year. They did lose their point guard, senior point guard Peter Leslie, who provided a lot of leadership. And like Mike says, we'll see how they can handle the ball in the first few games, because he handled the ball about 60% of the time for that team. And but that Mike Bresowitz, about 6'7", 6'8", forward, swing guard, wing, whatever you want to call him, and Chris Halverson, they're both mobile big men. He's 6'7", 6'8", both going Division I, and they're going to be awfully tough to beat. Dasovich does a good job with that program there. I think he came from the Hopkins.
The coaching tree,
Yeah, Hopkins coaching tree. And the other team, Eden Prairie, Lake Conference champions, lost a lot of seniors, but they have 4 returners that 2 of them started most of the games, and the other 2 about halfway. But anyhow, Ethan Raggy might be the best shooting guard in the state. 6'7", it's hard to block his shots. He averaged almost 18, 20 points a game last year. And then Brett Irvin averaged 10 or 12. He's 6'6". He was on the football team, the tight end, caught a lot of big passes for him. But 2 big guys, and they got 2 guards back, the Millers. I don't believe they're related, but they handle the ball, so they're going to be awfully tough to beat in the Lake Conference.
The coaches that I've talked to so far consider Eden Prairie to be the clear favorite in the Lake Conference. Some of the teams that I cover, Eastview, Egan, Lakeville North, have some athletes coming back, but they also have quite a few question marks. Eastview had a kid who would have been one of their top post players not come out for the team this year. Egan, for instance, has some younger guys they're pretty high on, but they were a 500 team last season. Rosemont lost Andrew Brummer, who's getting playing time down at Iowa.
Some on TV the other night.
Missing
Missed
a
the free throw at the end.
Unfortunate, yeah. But they're, as you mentioned, Eden Prairie has some question marks because they lost some guys, but the teams chasing them probably have more questions.
Right.